There's a feeling that I believe, sooner or later, nearly all of us have tasted. It's not a sharp, obvious pain. It's a dull, heavy ache, one that often finds us in our quietest moments. Maybe it's on a Sunday afternoon, as the last rays of sunlight fade, signaling that another work week is about to begin. Maybe it's on the drive home after a long day, stuck in endless traffic, when you suddenly realize you're staring through everything like a ghost. Or maybe it's when you're standing in front of the mirror in the morning, wondering if the person looking back is truly you, or just a version that's been programmed for survival. In those moments, a small but heavy question rises from the depths of your mind. Is this really it? Is life just this repeating cycle of waking up, working, paying bills, and waiting for the weekend? Is it just about climbing a corporate ladder that perhaps you didn't even choose for yourself? Is it really about trading 40 or 50 years of your youth, your vitality, and your precious time for a few short weeks of retirement on the other side of the hill? For years, I lived with that question as my silent companion. I did everything society deemed right. I studied hard, got a good job, earned a steady income. I walked the path that everyone else was walking. But the further I walked, the more I felt it wasn't leading anywhere I truly wanted to go. It felt like a perfect loop, a gilded cage, so exquisitely designed that you don't even realize you're trapped. And then, on a long journey of searching and research, I stumbled upon a different map, an old map, one not known to many, but it promised a way out of the loop. It didn't promise instant riches. It didn't promise an easy life. It promised something far more valuable: freedom. That map was called financial freedom. And this isn't a story about numbers. This is the story of reclaiming the right to write your own life story. In this new series, Things I Wish I Knew Sooner, we're going to decode this map together. Today, we begin with Chapter 1. To understand the new map, we first have to recognize that the old one most of us are using is obsolete. Think about the 20th century American dream, a model that was exported across the world. The script is familiar. Go to school, get into a good college, graduate, find a stable job at a large corporation, work hard for 40 years, collect your pension, and rest at age 65. That was once a promise of stability, an unwritten social contract. You give your loyalty and your labor, and in return, the company takes care of you for life. But that world no longer exists. The promise of a lifelong job has been broken. Pensions have all but vanished. The cost of living, housing, and especially education has skyrocketed, while wages have stagnated. A young person today doesn't graduate with a sense of confidence, but with the crushing weight of massive student loan debt, an invisible chain that forces them to take any job that can help pay it off. The old map no longer leads to the promised land. It leads to an endless rat race. And it was in this context that a new life philosophy was quietly born and began to spread. A silent revolution called FIRE, financial independence, retire early. Don't let the name retire early fool you. The core of FIRE isn't about stopping work. Many people who achieve FIRE continue to work, but they do work they are truly passionate about, free from financial pressure. The core of FIRE is to optimize your life to achieve freedom in the shortest time possible. It's a radical mindset shift. Instead of asking, how can I earn enough to cover my monthly expenses? It asks, how can I get my money to make enough money so I never have to worry about it again? Imagine it like this. Most people live like crew members on a massive ocean liner. They work hard in the engine room, collect their wages, and trust that the captain and the ship will get them to their destination. They have no control over the journey. They are employees. Someone pursuing financial freedom is different. They don't want to be a crew member. They want to learn how to build their own ship. That ship may not be large or luxurious. It might be a small, simple sailboat, but it's theirs. They are free to raise the sails and go wherever they want, whenever they want. The wind may blow, storms may rise, but the rudder is in their hands. That ship is your net worth. Learning to build it is the process of intelligent financial management. And the feeling of steering that ship freely across the vast ocean, that is financial freedom. It is not material wealth. It is the wealth of choice. It's when you wake up in the morning and the entire day stretches before you like a blank page, and you are the one holding the pen. Not your boss, not the bank, not your debts. You can say yes to an opportunity to travel the world for a year, even if it doesn't pay a dime. You can say no to a project that goes against your values, even if it promises a big payout. You can say yes to spending all the time you need to care for your aging parents. You can say no to missing your child's youth because of an endless meeting. Financial freedom isn't a final destination where you sit on a pile of money and do nothing. It is the journey itself that changes you, transforming you from a passive passenger into the active captain of your own life. It's about building a life that you don't need to retire from. That is the new definition of wealth in the 21st century. Not how much you have, but how free you are.
To truly understand the power of freedom, sometimes we have to feel the walls of the prison that holds us. This prison has no iron bars. Its walls are painted office gray, and it's lit by the cold, artificial glow of fluorescent lights. Allow me to tell you a story about someone who could be you, who could be me, who could be millions of others sitting in an office at this very moment. Let's call him Alex. Alex was a perfect product of the old map. He did everything right. He graduated from a prestigious university with a degree with honors and student loan debt the size of a small house. He quickly landed a job at a major corporation, a position many would envy, with a salary impressive enough to earn the admiration of others. Alex's life, from the outside, was a portrait of success. He drove a nice car on which he made monthly payments, lived in a modern downtown apartment, and wore expensive suits. He was the poster boy for the American dream. But let's look on the inside. Every morning, the alarm clock rang like a sentence. It wasn't an invitation to a new, exciting day, but the whistle signaling another shift in the salt mines. Alex would drag himself out of bed, chugging coffee to temporarily numb the chronic fatigue. He'd plunge into the morning commute, sitting motionless in his metal box, listening to the radio repeat meaningless news. The office greeted him with stale, recycled air and the smell of old coffee. He'd sit down in his ergonomic chair in a 60-square-foot space called a cubicle. The computer screen would light up, and Alex would begin to disappear. He answered emails, attended meetings where half of the discussion could have been an email, nodded along to hollow corporate jargon, and watched the clock tick by with cruel slowness. Lunch was a sandwich eaten hastily at his desk. His energy wasn't drained by hard labor, but by meaninglessness. He felt like a high-end cog in a giant machine whose purpose he didn't understand. He was busy, incredibly busy, but he wasn't actually doing anything. He was trading the most precious hours of his life to move numbers from one spreadsheet to another. By evening, Alex would come home completely exhausted, not physically, but spiritually. He had no energy left to read a book, to play an instrument, or to have a deep conversation with his loved ones. He would collapse on the sofa and let the blue light from the TV, from his phone, lull him into a state of temporary paralysis. And then the monster would arrive, the Sunday scaries. It would start on Sunday afternoon, a creeping anxiety that tightened its grip around his chest. The weekend, that brief parole, was almost over. The prison was waiting. Alex's problem wasn't that he hated his job. The problem was that his job gave him nothing but money. It offered no joy, no growth, no meaning. And the money, ironically, became the invisible chains. His high salary came with a phenomenon called lifestyle inflation. Every time he got a raise or a bonus, instead of using it to buy his freedom, he used it to build stronger walls for his prison. He upgraded to a more expensive car, which meant a bigger loan. He took fancier vacations and ate at high-end restaurants. He was caught in the race of keeping up with the Joneses, a race with no finish line. The more money he made, the more money he needed to sustain that lifestyle. He was trapped by his own success.
Then one night, after reading an article about someone who had died at 50 from overwork, Alex looked in the mirror. He didn't recognize the person staring back. The eyes that once sparkled with passion and dreams in college had been replaced by a tired, hollow emptiness. He couldn't sleep that night. He sat in front of his computer, and in a moment of quiet desperation, he typed the words he never dared to before into the search bar. How to escape the rat race. And that's when he found it. He fell down a rabbit hole of blogs, podcasts, and Reddit forums. He read stories of ordinary people, teachers, engineers, nurses, who had escaped the loop after just 10 or 15 years of work. He learned a new vocabulary, savings rate, index funds, the 4% rule. A completely new worldview opened up before him. He realized the problem wasn't that he needed to earn more money. The problem was that he needed a life that required less money. Happiness wasn't found in adding more luxuries, but in removing the non-essentials. He understood that every dollar he saved and invested wasn't just a number. It was a brick used to build his road to freedom. It was the act of buying back a small piece of his own time in the future. Alex's life began to change, not from the outside, but from within. He still went to work every day, but now he had a secret. He had a plan. He was no longer a hopeless prisoner. He was a man quietly digging an escape tunnel. He began to see the world through a different lens. His colleague's new luxury car no longer sparked envy, but sympathy. He saw it not as a symbol of wealth, but as a symbol of 5 more years of hard labor. The latest tech gadgets lost their appeal. He realized the peace of an undisturbed weekend morning was worth more than any phone. Alex's why had changed. It was no longer just about escaping a job he disliked. It became about building toward a life he truly wanted to live, toward having the time to read all the books he'd bought but never opened, toward learning to play the guitar again, toward being able to visit his parents whenever he wanted without having to ask for permission. Alex's story is the answer to the question, why? We pursue financial freedom not because we hate money. We pursue it because we love life. We recognize that time is finite, and it's the only asset we can never buy back. We do it so we can live a life of intention, a life where we wake up each morning grateful for another day to live, not sighing for another day to survive. That is why we need an escape route. Because on the other side of those walls, real life is waiting.
Alex's story doesn't end with his awakening. An epiphany, no matter how profound, will fade without a concrete plan of action. The desperation of being trapped was now replaced by a burning hope, and that hope pushed him to find a path, a detailed map to get out of there. And in the long nights of diligent research, Alex drew his own map. It wasn't complex. It didn't require him to be a financial genius or a stock-picking prodigy. The map was based on 3 simple yet incredibly solid pillars. Pillar number 1, the inner compass, recalibrating your mindset. This was the first and most critical step. Alex realized the war he had to fight wasn't against the stock market or his boss. The biggest war was the one waged inside his own mind. He had to fight against the social programming that had been installed in him for decades. The idea that success is measured by the size of your house and the logo on your car. That happiness can be bought with a credit card. That more is always synonymous with better. Alex began a new practice, not dry, traditional budgeting, but intentional spending. Before buying anything, instead of asking, "Can I afford this?" he started asking a different set of questions. Will this truly make my life better and happier? Does this align with my core values? And the most brutal question, how many hours of my life, how many working hours is this item worth? When he started converting everything into the currency of life energy, everything changed. The newest phone was no longer $1,200. It was a week and a half of his life in that cubicle. A fancy $200 dinner was half a day of his life. By doing this, he didn't feel like he was giving up or sacrificing. He felt he was making an intelligent trade. He was trading frivolous material goods for the most valuable asset of all, his own freedom. This inner compass became the guide for all his decisions. It helped him distinguish between genuine needs and manufactured wants shaped by advertising. It was the foundation, the core software for running his entire escape plan. Pillar number 2, the lighthouse, your freedom number. One of the most wonderful things Alex discovered was that this path was not vague. It had a specific destination, a clear coordinate on the map. That was his freedom number, also known as your fire number. For the first time, he felt an immense sense of relief. The dream of escaping the rat race was no longer a distant wish. It could be quantified. He learned about the 4% rule, a simple rule of thumb used by the fire community as a lighthouse. The rule states, you can consider yourself financially independent when you have accumulated a large enough pool of assets that you can withdraw 4% of it each year for your expenses, and this amount is enough to cover your entire cost of living with a high probability of never running out of money. In other words, your freedom number equals your annual expenses times 25. That night, Alex opened a spreadsheet. For the first time in his life, he seriously calculated how much money he truly needed per year to live a happy life. A number appeared. It was large, but it wasn't an impossible number. It wasn't tens of millions of dollars. It was a tangible figure. That number became Alex's lighthouse. On tiring days at the office, during moments of discouragement, he would just close his eyes and picture that lighthouse shining in the distance. It gave him the strength to keep rowing his boat through the rough waves. Pillar number 3, the vessel. The concrete actions. With a compass and a lighthouse, Alex now needed a vessel to set sail. This vessel wasn't glamorous. It was built from simple, repetitive, and somewhat boring actions. But its power lay in that very simplicity. Increasing the rowing speed or increasing savings rate. Alex realized the most important metric wasn't how much money he earned, but what percentage of it he kept. The savings rate became the speed of his vessel. He started at 10%, then pushed it to 20%, 30%, and eventually even 50% by cutting his biggest expenses. Every percentage point increase was like a strong tailwind pushing his sails. Choosing the perpetual engine or investing in index funds. Alex was not a financial expert, and he discovered that he didn't have to be. He learned about low-cost index funds, like those that track the S&P 500. This was a revolution. Instead of trying to find a needle in a haystack, he could just buy the whole haystack. He owned a tiny piece of the entire economy and simply let the power of compound interest and market growth do the work for him. He was building his freedom even in his sleep. He was building his freedom even in his sleep. He was building his freedom even in his sleep. Alex's story doesn't end with him retiring on a tropical beach. Not yet, because that isn't the most important part of the story. The most important part is the change that happened inside him. The next day, Alex still woke up to his alarm clock. He still drove to the office. He still sat in that 60-square-foot cubicle. From the outside, nothing had changed. But from the inside, everything had changed forever. He was no longer a prisoner. He was a man executing a grand escape. He no longer looked at the gray walls with hopeless eyes. He looked at them knowing that with every day that passed, with every dollar he invested, he was making those walls thinner. He had found a purpose larger than his daily job. He had found a game worth playing, a game where the ultimate prize was his own life. The Sunday scaries vanished, replaced by a quiet excitement for his plan. The physical walls of the office were still there, but the walls in his mind had already crumbled. He was free long before he actually left his job. And that, my friends, is the true power of this journey. It doesn't just give you a better future. It gives you a more meaningful present. This map exists. This escape route is real. It doesn't require luck or extraordinary talent. It requires the courage to ask questions, the discipline to follow a plan, and the belief that your life is worth more than a mere existence. In the next chapters of this series, we will dive deeper into each of the 3 pillars. We will learn how to build your inner compass, how to calculate your own lighthouse number, and how to build the most resilient vessel. But for today, I hope for just one thing, that Alex's story has ignited a spark in you, a spark of hope, a belief that another path is possible. Because the first wall that needs to crumble is always the one inside our own minds.